Were you taking notes during the video?
Right.
Well, who knows? Who knows? Sometimes I ask questions out of the videos. All right, Henry Ford was born in Springwell Township, Michigan, right next to Dearborn, just about 3 hours away from here, in 1863. To kind of give you an idea of the time frame, the Civil War started in 1860. Go ahead. Close. 61. So that kind of an idea. He was 2 years old after the Civil War started. He was 2 years old when he was born in 1863. He had an engineer's mind at a very young age, and at the age of 12, he built his first steam engine in a shed behind his house. Kind of fun. At 33 years old, he built his first horseless carriage. Cars were called horseless carriages because they basically were the carriages that horses would pull with motors on them. That's basically what they were. So a horseless carriage is what they started out. His first horseless carriage was a single-cylinder, 4-horsepower gasoline engine on 4 bicycle tires. That was his first car, called the quadricycle. You may have seen it in the video. I actually showed him riding it. This is like a little cart thing with a handle for a steering wheel with like bicycle tires. The quadricycle is what he called it. Before going into the actual car business, he actually worked for Thomas Edison. I don't know if you knew that or not, as his chief electrical engineer, there it is. But Ford believed that gasoline was the future of motors, to where Edison was trying to do electric. Edison was just about 150 years too early. And for 150 years, Ford was right. Internal combustion gasoline engines were the standard and have been the standard for 150 years. In 1903, he founded the Ford Motor Company after his original company, the Detroit Auto Company, went bankrupt. Ford Motor Company, from 1908 to 1928, developed and sold the Model T and then the improved Model A vehicles. Has anyone ever seen or ridden in a Model A or Model T? You have, Landon? Yeah? I can't hear you. Oh, really? You said your grandma owned one? Your grandpa? Oh, cool. Right on. Very cool. Because of the demand for these cars, the demand was so high. How they used to build cars is they would assign like 3 or 4 guys, and they would just build the car from the ground up. So if they had a factory, there'd be 3 or 4 guys over there building a car, 3 or 4 guys over there building a car, and they would just go from the ground up, and they would hand build these cars. Well, the demand was so high for these Model Ts especially that he developed, does anyone know, he developed the what? What? The moving assembly line. Ford is the one that invented the assembly line that like all factories use now. So instead of 3 or 4 guys over there and 3 or 4 guys over there, they would just stay in one spot, and there would be an assembly line, and he would start with the raw product in the beginning of the factory. And as it would move down the line, one person would just be responsible for just this part. The fun thing about the moving assembly line is it was just that. It moved, it never stopped. And so you had to start working like this, and then it would move in front of you, and you had to be done by the time it got out of your reach. Isn't that wild? So that's how this thing worked. It wasn't like stop, start. It just continuously moved, which ensured that the cars would be done quickly. They were done very quickly. I think at one point they were putting out a car every 24 seconds or something crazy like that, which is unheard of, just unheard of. So because of the demand of these cars, and they were very cheap, before Ford, cars were only for the rich. They were for the people that had wealth. They were for the super rich kind of people because these cars were hand built. These cars, the Model T, they were affordable. And so just the common folk could buy these cars. And really, Henry Ford is the reason why we all drive cars today. He didn't invent the automobile, but he made it accessible to common people. And so that's what he did. This moving assembly line renovated all the factories, all industry. And it's actually credited, he's credited for moving America from the agriculture age, farming age, into the age of industry. Because of that moving assembly line. All of a sudden factories could produce product, whether they were building cars or canning beans, it didn't matter. This idea of this moving assembly line went to all factories, which is pretty cool. Henry Ford did not invent the V8 engine. There were V8s, V12s, V10s, things like that before, but he did develop the first high-powered mass production flathead V8, which was, it was mass produced, so obviously you could put it in lots of cars, and it also was much better for horsepower, had much more horsepower than your other engines. Henry Ford he's gonna go down in history as a technological genius, as a symbol of American industry, and as an American folk hero. The Ford company has produced some of the world's best automobiles, including the Mustang, the Shelby Cobra, the Thunderbird, the GT, the Ford F-Series, and other cars and SUVs. The big three, as you know, are what? Ford, GM or Chevy, and Dodge or Chrysler, right? Those are the big three. Ford started all that. He started all that, and then as competition got hotter, basically after World War II, Chevrolet really kind of became the upstanding company. Yes, sir. Yeah, here's the crazy thing, and here's where Ford gets a little controversial. In World War II, he supplied parts and sometimes even labor for the Allies, for the US, and for the Nazis. So he was accused of being like a Nazi sympathist, but what he really was is he was basically a war neutral. He didn't care who was doing what. He was brought up, you remember, he was born right in the middle of the Civil War, right? So he hated war. Any kind of fighting, that sort of thing, he didn't like it. So when he got involved in World War II, he didn't pick sides, so he was accused of being a Nazi sympathist. But who knows for real, right? You know, but it is true that he did supply parts and things for the Nazis. That is true, but not just the Nazis. Like if he only did it for Germany and the Nazis, obviously that'd be a problem, right? But it was for everybody. It was for everybody. So it's kind of interesting. Here's some unusual facts about Henry Ford. When the Ford Model T first came out, Henry Ford said, you can get it in any color you want, as long as it's black. For many years, you could only get the Model T in black. Here's why. Black paint was cheap. Black paint dried very quickly, and remember, it's on a moving assembly line, so by the time this painted part gets to the next guy, it's got to be dry. So black paint, it dried quickly, and it was quite durable. So it was cheap, dried quickly, and it was durable. So for years, you could only get Model Ts in black. So if you ever get a Model T, if you ever see a Model T from 1908 to 26, I think, and it's a different color than black, it's been repainted. So, kind of interesting.
A purple one.
A purple one? Yeah, I mean, they actually would chop these Model Ts and Model A's down into hot rods and stuff, which I think are pretty cool.
It was just like at a car show, and it was just like on the back of like somebody's like, I don't know, it was a Yahoo.
It was a what?
A Yahoo. Tahoe. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you mean it's on a trailer? He was trailering it?
Yeah. It was attached to, another vehicle.
Yeah.
It was just...
I love going to car shows. I love going to car shows and seeing, well, the Model A's and the Model T's, and either the original restored ones or even the hot rodded ones. You know, I think they're cool.
I don't follow Ford. Dodge is like what I follow.
Well, I own a Dodge. I own a Chevy. But me and JJ were actually talking about the F-Series pickup trucks. They did diesel. They did a 7.3 diesel from what, 90? Is that right? Yeah, I had a 2000 7.3. Okay, that sounds right. Right on. Amazing truck. I mean, that 7.3 diesel is like bulletproof. So anyway, I mean, if I had to pick a company, I'm probably a Chevy guy, probably, but I drive a Dodge. But I really respect Ford. I really do. I really respect Ford for where they were, where they came from, and just the history behind it. So. Oh, you mean my F-150? Yeah. So yeah, I guess I have all three. All right, another interesting fact: when Ford developed the assembly line, he also invented the 5-day work week with 8 hours in the day, 8-hour work days. He also paid his employees $5 a day, which was twice the going rate. So he actually paid his employees very well. This is in the early 1900s. What this did is this kept his workforce very happy. It also encouraged them to put forth effort, because working at the Ford Motor Company in the early 1900s, that was something to write home about. If you got into the Ford Motor Company in Detroit in the early 1900s, you were set for a long time. You were set for life. And I think there was a pension program or something where if you worked for them for 30 years, you got like this really good retirement package or something, if I remember right. I think GM did the same thing too, like a 30-year retirement plan. Not only did Henry Ford pay his employees well, but he also had a soft spot for the disabled and the handicapped, which was kind of interesting. I wouldn't think that. But he had a soft spot for the disabled and the handicapped, and 25% of his employees had some sort of disformity, or they had some sort of handicap. And he could do that because of that moving assembly line. If you had like a bum hand, or maybe you only had one leg, you could just sit and you could do that one repetitive thing over and over, to where if you were tasked to build a whole car, you couldn't do that if you had like a handicap, right? But his assembly line allowed him to hire people with handicaps, and he had a soft spot for those that had handicaps. So 25%, which is very high, 25% of his employees had some sort of physical disformity, which I thought was really interesting. All right, here's where we get the fun stuff. You ready? This is really fun for me. In the late 60s, Henry Ford's grandson was the president of the company, okay? So this is in the 60s now, so it's been quite a while. Ford is huge, huge company, and Ford was in negotiations to purchase Ferrari. They wanted to purchase the Ferrari Motor Company. Well, what happened was during the negotiations, Ferrari pulled out of the deal publicly and rudely. So that ticked off Ford. It made him mad. So here's what they did. Ford built the GT40. Does anyone know what the GT40 is? Yeah, it is an amazing car. Amazing car. GT stands for Grand Touring. 40 is the height in inches of the car from ground to the windshield line. 40 inches tall. The GT40 is a supercar of supercars, and it wasn't built by an Italian like Ferrari, Lamborghini. It was built by guys in Detroit. It was built by Americans in Michigan. What they did is they built the GT40 and they entered it into what's called the Le Mans. The Le Mans is a 24-hour race. It's an Italian race that Ferrari just dominated for years. And Ford said, we're gonna beat them at their own game. So they built this GT40 as revenge against Ferrari. And they whooped Ferrari in the Le Mans when it was entered. This whooped them and embarrassed Ferrari to no end. They actually made a movie about it a few years ago called Ford versus Ferrari. It's got, who's it got in it? Matt Damon and Christian Bale. Yes, sir. $250,000 minimum. Yeah. Chester? I'll do better than that, Chester. I'm going to show you a video of the GT40. You ready? All right, I'm going to show it to you right now.
I believe the exact amount, if I'm correct, was $1.4 million is how much they go for.
Hey, the lights, please, Derek. Lights, please. All right, here you go. Here is a GT40.
The GT40 is easily my favorite car that's ever been made. I thought I had enough collective experience to build one myself. I was really unrealistic about how long it would take to build this car. A year and a half in, I sort of reached my breaking point, and I thought this might be the first project that I haven't finished. Once it was done, it was one of the most satisfying things in my life. I keep a stash of earplugs in because it is that uncivilized. It's rowdy, it's loud. Driving this car is a workout. You feel every crack in the road. You can't let your mind wander. You've got to stay focused. Even though you're surrounded by this noise, it's peaceful. It's almost meditative. It handles and it's planted. You can drive it really fast. It does everything you want it to do. I know every square inch of the car. If I just bought this car, it wouldn't feel the same. My name is Eric Dean, and this is why I drive.
Nice, please.
What's the top speed?
Pushing 300. I forget what it is in the quarter mile.
Pushing 300.
Yeah.
The Landon said it was slow.
But, yeah, it's.
It was driving.
What'd you say? What'd you say it was?
He was driving.
I couldn't hear what you said.
He was driving.
Oh, he was? Well, he was on a public road, for one thing. Yeah. So the GT40, what's so fun about that is it's just like boys with their toys. And here you have these multi-billion-dollar companies, and they decide to build this car just as I'm gonna get back at you for embarrassing me. I think that's hilarious to me. I mean, it's just like grown-ups with their toys, you know? And now the GT40 is like, I've seen them. Of course, I've never driven one. I've seen them, and they're huge. I mean, they're wide, they're low. They look like they're going 50 miles an hour sitting still. I mean, they're just amazing cars. I mean, they're so cool. Anyway, there you go. Very good. So that's a GT40. All right, I got 3 life lessons I want to share with you from Henry Ford, and then I'm going to show you one more video, which is pretty cool. 3 life lessons from Henry Ford. You ready? This is kind of a repeating theme from Walt Disney, from Elon. Again, these successful people, they keep saying this kind of same thing. And here's the lesson. Treat failures as opportunities. That's what he says. Treat failures as opportunities. Here's a quote by Henry Ford.
Didn't Walt Disney say a kick in the teeth is better than
Yeah. No, he said sometimes what you need is a good kick in the teeth or something like that. Right. Here's what Henry Ford said. Quote, you ready? There's no disgrace in honest failure. I appreciate that. I like the honest failure part, because if you're dishonest, yeah, you're gonna fail. But he says there's no disgrace in honest failure. There is disgrace in fearing to fail. You guys remember what happened to his first company before the Ford Motor Company? The Detroit Ford Motor Company, what happened? It went bankrupt. So he, just like Disney, his cartooning studio, the first one went bankrupt. Ford had a very, very similar experience. Before Ford's rise to success, he initially encountered many, many failures in the creation of his automobile, in the creation of his quadricycle, his first automobile, the factory, all those things. His investors backed out of deals on him. He had these investors lined up, and they said, oh, no, we're not gonna do it. They backed out. When he didn't have the sustainable funding for his ventures, he was not deterred though. He said, all right, I'm gonna keep moving. I'm gonna keep going. He had to reevaluate what he was doing. He had to reevaluate, okay, am I going in the wrong direction here? Like, what's going on here? So he would maneuver, but he wouldn't stop, which is very similar to Elon Musk, if you remember. Elon Musk would look at a failure and say, okay, how can we fix it? How can we make it better? Henry Ford did the same thing 150 years ago. He would look at a problem, say, okay, what went wrong? What's the problem? How can we make it better? Ford did not see failures, or he did see, Ford did see failures as stepping stones. So he'd fail, okay, I'm gonna move forward. I failed again, I'm gonna move forward. But they were honest failures. They were not dishonest failures. He didn't try to cheat, he didn't try to go the easy way, he was going the right way. It was very hard, but he still would move and he'd push even when he would fail. Those honest failures were stepping stones for him. So when we fail, We should not concentrate just on the emotional disappointment, but we should look at it as intellectual gain, because ultimately failures are what, guys? You've said it before. Failures are what?
That means they're
Learning. They're learning. They're lessons. I knew that's what you meant, Landon. No, that's what you meant. Failures ultimately, especially honest failures, are lessons. Only when we fail do we discover new ways of doing it or doing it better. So don't be afraid to fail honestly. Don't be afraid to fail honestly. Learn from those mistakes instead. Okay, that's number one. Treat failures as opportunities. Number two, be passionate and committed. Be passionate and committed. Henry Ford says this. He says, the whole secret of a successful life is to find out what is one's destiny and then do it. And then do it. I was just talking to somebody today actually about the difference between dreams and goals. There's a big difference. I know a lot of dreamers out there. People who are just like, oh, I wish I could do this someday. I'd like to do that someday. And they're these lofty dreams that are like far off. Dreams are good. I've told you before, never shut the dream factory down. But if you actually want to obtain something, if you want that dream to go further, you have to make some real plans. You have to say, okay, here's this dream. Now, how do I actually do it? Which is what Henry Ford said. He said the whole secret to a successful life is to find out, in other words, what your dream is, but he doesn't stop there. And then he says, and do it. And do it. That's the difference between successful people and just dreamers, is they put the rubber to the road, they actually get going, they make plans, they do it one step at a time. And if failure comes, they don't let that stop them. They maneuver, they move, and they keep moving. Henry Ford's passion for engines and automobiles, began at a very young age, as you guys know, 12 when he built his first steam engine. And this persevered through his adulthood. If he did not commit to this passion, do you remember Walt Disney? Do you remember what his dad wanted him to do? Do you guys remember? What was it, Landon? Do you remember?
Keep the company going.
No, his dad didn't care about the company. What was it, Edward? What? Paper route. Paper route. Take over the paper route. If Walt Disney would have just been a paper boy or a paper adult, we would have never been talking about him. But he said, no, Dad, I see how a paper route can make you some money. I get that. But I'm going to do something else. Well, Henry Ford is very similar. They wanted him to take over the farm. Nothing wrong with farming, but that wasn't Henry Ford's passion. He was addicted to gas and oil. I'm a little addicted to gas and oil. I love going to races. I love going to car shows. I just love it. Henry Ford was like that too. And he took his passion and he made it into something that made him and his company and his employees a ton of money. Enough to where they could say, I want to buy Ferrari. Could you ever imagine being in that position where you can say, you know what? I want to buy Ferrari. Could you imagine that? And then if they say no, I'm going to build a $500,000 rocket machine and go whoop all over Ferrari over in Italy. I mean, that's just insane to me. But I think it's super cool.
Only because
it's super cool. Only because what?
Only because they declined the buying.
That's what it was. Yeah. Well, they did it rudely. They did it. Yeah. It was I don't remember exactly what happened there, but yeah, it made Ford upset. People often dismiss their passions. People often dismiss their passions because they are what?
Scared.
They're scared.
Of making mistakes.
They're afraid. They're afraid of stepping out. They're afraid of trying this or trying that. So what happens is those dreams that they had sometimes get forgotten. Sometimes get forgotten. He says, be passionate about what you're interested in and then be committed to it. Being committed to something isn't always easy. You guys, I guess you could say, are kind of forced, I guess, to be committed to Pineview. You have to do it, right? You have to get through your levels, get through your weeks, go to school, all those things. There's always going to be things that you have to do that you be committed to. But you can take that sense of commitment, and when you have opportunity, apply it to something you actually enjoy, something that you really have a passion about. I know a kid that is working on developing video games right now. So he took his passion of video games, and he was like playing a video game. I don't remember what game it was. He was playing a video game, and he just had a thought occur to him. He said, you know what? If they would have done this, the video game would have been better. So then he took it on himself. I should know how to do that. I should know how to either make video games better or adapt them better or write a whole nother video game and then sell the darn thing. Do you not think that the video games you guys play are making people billions of dollars? Absolutely they are. And they're just interests they have. So if you have an interest, I don't care if it's video games or cars or whatever it is, find a way to adapt it to a passion and then commit yourself to it. And you guys could really go far with it. You could be successful in what you enjoy. And if you're successful in what you enjoy in life, dude, I mean, you'll have a great life because it'll feel like you're not even going to work. It won't be drudgery. You'll be happy to go. You'll get up and you'll say, man, I get to go to work today. Right? What's that? It could be part of it. That could be part of it. Right on. All right, so be passionate and committed. Number 3 is the last one here. Again, very similar to Disney, similar to Elon. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. I've actually shared this quote before with you from Henry Ford. He said this, I don't know if maybe you remember it, maybe you don't. He says this, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. You're right. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, Henry Ford would say, you're right. Do you guys remember the Tinkerbell effect from Peter Pan? You guys remember that at all? Oh, there was a clock in it, but that wasn't quite that lesson. But yeah, you're close. What do you remember from Peter Pan? If you said something about fairies, what would happen to the fairy? It would die. If you said what? I don't believe in fairies. If you say, I don't believe in fairies, in the Peter Pan world, a fairy somewhere would what? Would die. In Peter Pan, the Tinkerbell effect is a psychological term that says if you believe in yourself or you believe in someone else, you are a life bringer. So if you say, I'm not sure how, but I think I can do that. I believe I could take care of that. I believe somehow I can get that done. You bring life to yourself. Or if you say it to somebody else, if you hear about someone's dream or some goal they have and you say, you know what, with the right ambition, I think you could do it. That brings life to them. But if you say to yourself, no, I can't do that. I don't believe in myself. That's not going to work. I could never be that. I could never do that. What do you do to yourself? You die a little bit. Or if someone says to you, you're never going to amount to anything. You can't do that. I doubt that. What does that do to you? Oh, that's the Tinkerbell effect. If you believe in yourself or believe in others, you bring life. If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe in others, you bring, psychologically, death. That's the Tinkerbell effect. And that's what Henry Ford would say. He'd say, whether you believe in yourself or not, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Isn't that neat? That's a psychological thing. Many times we are deterred from achieving our dreams because we lack that self-confidence to do so. We often seek recognition from those we might admire. That we often forget that real recognition should come from where? Within. It should come from us. I've told you before, when I was building my house in Alaska, I was like the only one that believed in me. I was like the only one that thought I could do it. I'd never built a house before. I was watching YouTube videos how to build a house. That's how I learned. Yeah, and other people were like, oh, it's too risky, Rodney. Oh, you shouldn't do that. And I said, you know, I hear you, but I think I can do it. So I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep pushing. Yeah, sure is. Yep. I sold it, yeah. To build a successful career in life, the key ingredient really is believing in yourself. It's self-belief. That really is what it is. And so you have Henry Ford was born 1863. The company was brought up through the Model T and the Model A, all those other cars we talked about. And I want to show you one more video. I want to show you the latest thing that kind of gets my blood pumping that Ford has released. It's the Mustang, not the dark horse,
The GT?
the GTD, the Grand Touring Daytona. This thing
Oh my body.
is a monster. It is literally, the tagline for the GTD is street legal, but barely. They took the GT race car and basically made it street legal. 815 horsepower out of the factory. It's a supercharged 815 horsepower out of the factory.
That's not.
Have you ever driven anything over 300 horse?
Yes.
I don't know if you have. All right, let me show this to you. This is the GTD. This is the latest thing. It's coming out this year. Hey, the lights. This is a quick little
Is there
video.
an actual video? Let's watch this one. Let's watch this one. I want to see actual.
7 minutes feels like an eternity.
So there's longer videos of it and stuff, but we don't have time to
Should we
do
just
that.
watch like a snippet of it?
No.
I don't care. I gotta.
So the latest offering from Ford is the Mustang GTD. So my son's Mustang is a GT. It's an 08 GT, stick shift, 5.0, etc. About 350 horse. That thing is plenty fast. Plenty fast. You can put that thing in first and then quickly in the second, and you can spin the tires, no problem. It's plenty fast, plenty fast. So this is almost three times as much horsepower as my son's Mustang, which is a monster. It's just a monster. Yes, sir.